Welcome to How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, the stories behind the people driving results in the nonprofit sector.
If I could change the nature of the relationship between nonprofit clients and vendors, and especially consultant vendors, it would be to first do an internal review of what their real needs were at the organizations. This is true irrespective of whether they're purchasing services or they're contracting for counsel. And then I would have them just sit down and talk with a number of different firms to see if they were right, to first review their own self-assessment, but without taking too much time from the consultant, but to learn as much as they could, not to be sold, but to really listen.
We are joined by Jay Frost of frostonfundraising.com. Jay has been a fundraising consultant and speaker for the past 28 years and shares a wealth of knowledge in today's episode. Here's my interview with Jay.
I'm here today with Jay Frost. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, great to be with you.
First off, can you just introduce yourself and how you first got started helping nonprofits?
Sure. Well, let me see. It goes back quite a ways. I think I started in the field really right out of college. I had gone off to California to try and break into the film business. That was a colossal failure. So I came back with my tail between my legs, which is really an insult to all dogs, I think. Went back to DC where my parents were living. And my dad introduced me to someone he had done a project with over at the National Endowment for the Arts. So I went over and met with them, and a meeting fell to meeting. And soon enough, I was employed at the National Endowment for the Arts and was there for a little over 2.5 years. And it was a period when there was a great deal of attrition. In fact, the federal government was trying to close the agency, trying to find a way to do that. It was the perennial battle against arts funding. But that also meant that young people like me had a chance to do a lot more than we otherwise would have. And so by the time I was done there, I was managing about $2 million or more in grants to writers. It was a great jumping board into the world of philanthropy. So that's how it all began. It was a very, very happy beginning.
Okay. And then I was looking through your kind of history of work. A little bit over 5 years you spent as editor-in-chief for International Philanthropy.
Yes.
Now, what are some of the, biggest factors to consider for fundraisers and consultants working internationally rather than just here in the States?
And I think that is a question that you're right to frame as one of what does it look like to us and what does it look like to others looking back?
Yeah.
It's, of course, a big, very diverse world. We're all at different stages in terms of our development of fundraising. Not so much philanthropy. I think philanthropy is a native state for all people everywhere. Philanthropy has been going on forever in the earliest civilizations. I'm reminded of this whenever I go back to Japan, which is the place where I first started doing that kind of travel. In Japan, if you go to one of the major temples, you can see where donors are being honored. And that's been going on for 700, 800 years.
Yeah.
So it's nothing unique to American philanthropy, but there is something really unique about our fundraising. The sales process that we apply to what we do, where we are building relationships, developing metrics and hiring staff and training people to go out and listen to people. We don't do it perfectly here, but we have a lot of experience with it. We make a concerted effort at it. And so I think that's the chief difference as I see it. Having said all that, the opportunities for philanthropy around the world are enormous. I mean, 75% of the world's wealth is outside our border. If we want to really take advantage of the opportunity to engage with donors and potential donors, we have to look outside the U.S. borders. And for people outside the United States, I would also say the chief challenge is not looking to the place where it seems like there's so much philanthropy in the United States, but instead opening the doors to giving within your own communities. Whether you're in Bangladesh or in Boston, the situation is the same. We've got to build relationships, ask people to give, have real and meaningful, trustworthy relationships with them, and make them co-owners of the destiny of our missions.
Gotcha. Now, what fundraising roles have you had over the years? I know you've kind of moved around quite a bit and worked with a lot of different companies that help nonprofits.
Yes, I have had kind of a strange career, circuitous path here. The first job I had when I left the endowment was briefly at the American Film Institute. I was there for just under a year. There was a lot of things happening there. I had an opportunity to go within 10 months to work as a straight fundraiser as opposed to a program person over at a place called Meridian International Center. And I was there for about 4 years, first working to finish off a capital campaign and then working on a number of different projects ranging from arts exhibitions to the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. Lots of different kinds of things that we raised money for a lot with an international orientation. So I was there again for about 4 years. And at that point, I had the opportunity to join a burgeoning company that was part of what is now known as Thomson Reuters that dealt with a lot of securities data. It was the very early stages of working with that kind of information in the context of major gifts and major capital campaigns. So I left the world of being a straight fundraiser and then joined the team at what was then known as CDA InvestNet. And then after a time there, after about 4 years there, I had an opportunity to go back into the fundraising world and worked as a line fundraiser as director of major gifts for a wonderful organization, International Rescue Committee out of New York, and was doing that role and enjoying that work, but then was seduced back into the world of Thomson Reuters so I could run that division and later take over the company and spin it out as an independent entity. Over that period of time and then in subsequent years, I've been working either as a fundraiser, as a service provider to fundraisers and nonprofits, later as a consultant to nonprofits, and of course along the path just being a good friend of them, whether as a volunteer or today even I'm working to help on the political side where I'm raising money within the context of one of the political parties to support a congressional race here in Virginia. So a lot of different fundraising all along the path, and it continues to be a big part of what I do every day, whether as a consultant or a volunteer.
Now, I noticed in your kind of background with college is theater production was one of your focuses there. Is there any part of that that plays a part in your roles today?
It probably does. I hadn't really thought about it until you asked that question. Maybe it's more symptomatic of my natural impatience. I really like projects, sort of like a show. If you've ever been in a play, have you ever been in a play or anything like that?
I've been in pit orchestras before.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Unless you're in a show that runs forever, unless it's Les Mis or something, you know that you go into the show, there's a lot of excitement and, of course, a lot of pain as you get ready. Then you bring the show to life. You're doing the show. Hopefully it's well received. It plays for a while. Maybe if you're lucky, it moves around a bit. All of that experience does play into probably what I'm doing today since I do speak a lot. I really enjoy the stage work. And I was not just in production, but I started doing a fair number of shows when I was in college, which I know was a long time ago now, in everything from dinner theater productions to new work. All of that means that I'm comfortable with and, in fact, kind of really enjoy being on the stage, being in front of people, working with people, getting a reaction from an audience. But at the same time, I also like the project orientation, which I think fits into consulting and nonprofits, where if it were just doing the same thing forever, I don't have the constitution for that. But if it's doing something where, okay, we're going to have a campaign, we're going to do a feasibility study, it's going to run from this date to that date, and then we're going to be done and celebrate it and move on. That's really wonderful for me. It's sort of like being in a show. You go, you get it ready, you produce it, you love it, and then you move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Something I'm curious about as well is you've been doing this for quite a while now. Before the internet, how was it different back then, and how has the tools, how has that impacted how fundraising, the approach to fundraising is done?
I do see a big difference in life before and after, and it's certainly made a big difference in terms of our ability to be smart about, in fundraising anyway, where donors are coming from, what their concerns are and their interests are, and so forth. I think there's a tendency, though, I don't know if you agree, to focus on the utility of these things. And I wonder sometimes if maybe we're focused too much on the tools instead of what the tools can help us to learn about actual human beings. So on the social media side is a good example of that, because I really am a big believer, at least I have been, in social media for nonprofits and particularly for fundraising, that it can be monetized. But it concerns me that the more we mature in our use of these platforms, the less we use them to actually listen to people and have a real conversation with them. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we have in fundraising, nonprofits, and politics and society in our country is that we do the easier thing instead of doing the hard thing, which is to look into people's eyes, listen to them carefully, and build our plans around the needs of a broader audience than ourselves.
Yeah. Now, you've had a couple different roles I've noticed. One with Brian Lacey and Associates. Are you a consultant with them, or what's your role there?
I've worked with a number of consultancies over the last few years. So Brian is someone I've known for a long time, and his work, of course, has been often in the world of kind of the direct marketing, annual fund, all the things that make up the absolutely essential core base of everything we do, right? Let's touch everyone, let's listen to everyone, let's reach out to everyone. And he does that really well, both on the service side and also as a consultant. So since much of my work, especially in the last 2 decades has been in major gifts. It's been kind of a nice partnership in that if he has a project where, whether it's doing a webinar or today with some of the feasibility studies that we're pitching together, he's going to be able to look at the entire constituency in a way that I think is pretty robust and complementary to what happens on the top 1 to 3% of the population. I really believe that you need both. If you want to treat everybody well and you want to make sure you have a sustainable program, you can't treat people like human ATMs on the bottom and focus all of our work on the top, or vice versa, that if you do one at the expense of the other, it is truly unsustainable. And it's also not very complementary to the donors. Working with Brian is all about that. It's about finding ways to make sure that we work on projects where we're not just looking at one or the other, but we're looking at the entire population of people who care about the same things we do.
Gotcha. And what's your process like for getting started with the new client? Is there like a discovery meeting, or how do you assess how you can be of most help to them?
Yeah, that seems to change with every client, doesn't it? My life is a discovery meeting. You're interviewing me today, so I'm talking a lot. In most meetings I would have with people, I hope that what I would be doing would be asking questions and listening to you. So I have a fair number of meetings with people who I can never work with. It's not a good approach to business. It definitely is satisfying and I hope helpful to those other people. I'll get contacts especially from people overseas who are interested in raising money, who are really not at a point where they can do that yet. They have contacts with organizations around this country where they need to do some preliminary board work. They need to write a good case statement. They need to think about why they're focused all on one part of the pyramid versus another. Very fundamental conversations. So I think that is all kind of discovery. And that's true also when I talk to people about something very specific. If I've just had a conversation with a couple organizations about feasibility studies, which is a very hot topic because people aren't really sure they believe in them, or other people rely on them too much. I would like to think that not only is that initial meeting with a potential client kind of a discovery meeting where you're finding out where they're coming from, what their actual needs are, and then trying to figure out if you can help them. But every one of those studies, every one of those projects really starts like that. And the reason I love feasibility studies is because every meeting is an opportunity to listen to people who, as much as we think we know them and love them, have often felt that they have not been heard. And so I'm a big believer in listening first and acting second.
Now, you also have worked with Gerald Penis' company, organization.
Yeah.
Did you know him personally? Any key takeaways from what he's taught you over the years?
Oh, yeah, my gosh. In fact, I'm looking at a picture of us right now. It's on my desk. For those who don't know Jerry, first of all, his work has been a big influence on a lot of us in fundraising. We often talk about the book Asking, which is one of those primers for fundraising. A lot of his books literally say on the cover or inside something about how you can read this book in 55 minutes. And they are easy reads. What people may not know is that he often dictated, or maybe almost always dictated the books, so they're very conversational, which is to the credit not only of Jerry and the way he was able to communicate to all of us about doing the things we need to do, but also understanding where people were, that they needed to hear these concepts and be able to receive them in their own way and activate their own capacity to really get to know people, to engage with people, to invite them to be partners in projects. So no, I learned a lot from Jerry, and fortunately for those who haven't had a chance to work with him, that is still well documented, not only in the work of the firm, and I do continue to work with the firm. I'm still working as a senior consultant with them, but also is open to everybody, again, through these books. And yes, I worked with Jerry for several years on the staff, now work independent of the firm, and I would encourage anybody to go and look at his work and learn more about it. Jerry passed away just recently, but he has a lifetime of contribution he's made. It's something that'll stay with us for quite a long time.
Yeah. Now, what's your typical schedule like?
I don't have a typical schedule. Anyone who listens to this, don't do what I do. If I have a period where I'm working on, let's say, a study or there's a campaign going on, then I'm flying back and forth a lot to the client to work with them. By the way, I think some of that can be done virtually, but it's just helpful for many clients to be able to see the person they're working with. And it's essential if you're meeting with donors. A lot of my work is really tailored to whatever the project orientation is. So when I'm speaking a lot, then I'm here at my house, dressed informally, and then preparing the next presentation, talking to people on the phone. I would say probably half my day, a typical day when I'm not with a client, is just conversing with people either via email or by phone, or working on the next project, including a couple of books, which I've been nursing for a period of time.
Okay. And as far as consulting with nonprofits, you'll do that outside of your work with Brian Lacey, and you'll have some independent clients as well?
I've done some work with Resource Alliance, some of their clients overseas and domestically. Of course, work with Gerald Penis, Lindsay and Partners on projects, and then also with Brian Lacey. But I do have people come to me directly, especially for things that are along the nature of board retreats and things of that nature.
What is your approach for finding new clients? Is it just through the talks, people hear you and they approach you after that, or is there anything more to it than that?
That's been primarily what's happened. Is it's been word of mouth, or it's come from the firms that I've had the opportunity to work with. Brian might have things that he's generating where either brought to Penis Lindsay or that have come up through Penis Lindsay that I've done, including speaking engagements. And then in terms of other work going forward, I have done marketing from time to time in the past. And in fact, I'm about to engage again with a VA firm about this in the coming days. I haven't done that for quite a while, but I would like to increase the pace of the speaking engagements that I do. I do about 20 or 30 a year, but I really enjoy that work, and I'd like to increase the volume.
And when you are working with clients, what makes that ideal client for you? And has there been moments where you've had to turn down work?
Yes. And frankly, I should have done that more often. This is particularly true of screenings. So I owned a screening firm in the past, and I've worked with a couple of others. And there were times when I would turn down work or discourage people from doing the screening because I didn't think that they would necessarily make the best use of it. I didn't want them to spend the money right then. And that's, again, not a great approach to business, but it's sincere. And in the consulting realm, it's difficult, I think, increasingly for me anyway. If there's an RFP generated, for example, I've looked at several in the last couple of days, especially for feasibility studies. And I'm a big believer in these studies. But I do think that people need to be ready to act on the data, and they need to be ready to do whatever they're going to do when those results come through. And some organizations simply aren't. What I would prefer to do is to have the kind of discovery call you mentioned earlier. But some organizations are resistant to that. They're very careful about talking with potential service providers or consultants because they want to be fair. And that I understand. Unfortunately, that's virtually impossible to do. If I could change the nature of the relationship between nonprofit clients and vendors, and especially consultant vendors, it would be to first do an internal review of what their real needs were at the organizations. This is true irrespective of whether they're purchasing services or they're contracting for counsel. And then I would have them just sit down and talk with a number of different firms to see if they were right, to first review their own self-assessment, but without taking too much time from the consultant, but to learn as much as they could, not to be sold, but to really listen. If they felt they needed an RFP, I'd write the RFP based upon what they had learned through that process, through their own self-discovery. If that process were in play more often, I think we would have a couple things happen. First, people wouldn't provide all these RFPs that don't get a lot of responses. Second, the responses they got would be tailored to the institutional needs. And third, and most importantly, the results would be better. They wouldn't engage in studies before it was the right time. They would take the right actions after the studies were completed.
Now, the final question I have before we get to the lightning round is, when you are brought in to do these talks, do you also do workshops?
All sorts of things. Now I'm talking to someone about doing another almost TED-style talk, and I've done several of those, anything from 18 minutes to 30 minutes. At several conferences. So it's kind of a keynote style, but I try to do those in a very interactive way, whether it's for National Philanthropy Days or some other kind of venue. But that goes all the way through workshops that last 3 hours. I've done things as long as 6 hours. It really does vary according to the needs of the institution or the conference needs. So it's all sorts of things. What's fun about that is really building it with the organization. So if that means a workshop, I do a workshop. In fact, I did workshops with the Institute for Charitable Giving for several years, and I think that approach is very useful. It's just that not everybody always has time to go somewhere else for 2 days. So I try to bring that same kind of approach, very interactive, whether it's 18 minutes or a whole day, to wherever I go. What I really try to impart is why, because there's nothing more important than figuring out why I should get up in the morning, why I should do what I do, why I should keep refueling myself for that work. All the hows in the world won't necessarily help us to remember why we are doing this.
When we return, a quick lightning round. First, a quick break.
This episode of How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy is brought to you by us here at MarketSmart and the Fundraising Report Card. Expand your fundraising consultancy toolkit by signing up for fundraisingreportcard.com. What is the Fundraising Report Card? Well, it's a free service offered at fundraisingreportcard.com that enhances your business with easy-to-use fundraising analytics and charts. Help your clients get proposals approved faster by using the beautiful and elegant charts created automatically in seconds by fundraisingreportcard.com. Best of all, you can use your logo in the reports and charts it generates. Learn more about the consultant version of Fundraising Report Card at www.fundraisingreportcard.com/consultants. Available as a free version or a paid version billed quarterly or annually. Once again, that's fundraisingreportcard.com/consultants. Now, back to how I built my fundraising consultancy.
So with that, let's get to lightning round, just a series of quick questions and answers.
Sure.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Have a really good second in command. And by that, I mean a person who complements your skills.
What book would you recommend to those getting started?
There's a book by Bill Sturtevant, and it's all about major gifts. And I'm forgetting the title right now. I think it's indispensable to anybody doing major gift fundraising. It's about being good at your craft.
What's your favorite personal productivity habit?
Avoiding email.
Do you have a favorite monthly service or subscription you're signed up for?
The New Yorker.
What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
That I've been playing music since forever.
Desk or car, what would you clean first?
Desk.
Tea or coffee?
Tea. I used to own a tea company.
What do clients never ask you that you wish they did?
What do you want to be doing in 10 years?
What's the most common error you see nonprofits make?
Not listening to their donors, even when they think they are.
What charities do you admire or support?
A bunch. They range from my alma mater, Interlochen Center for the Arts. I've been very active with them, and I give to them regularly, and they're in my will. All the way through to the Southern Poverty Law Center, our local interfaith group that works the homeless, as well as another one on the West Coast. And my family also supports Smith College because that's where my wife went. And we support different organizations that work for social justice.
And where can people find more information about your services?
I have a website about my speaking and a little bit about my counsel work at frostonfundraising.com. And there's a list of everywhere I'll be speaking, as well as a way to reach me. And then, of course, people can reach out to Gerald Penis, Lindsay & Partners when I work with them, to Donor Search, and listen to the sessions I conduct there. Finally, with Brian Lacey, which is at brianlacey.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jay, for your time today. It's been great chatting with you.
Oh, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, presented by MarketSmart. If you like the show, make sure to review it in Apple Podcasts and pass it along to a colleague. If you're curious about what we do, go to imarketsmart.com and don't forget to check out the consultant's version of Fundraising Report Card found at www.fundraisingreportcard.com/consultants. Thanks for listening.